Welcome back to Something to Complain About. This is A. I'm here with T. We are ready to kick off episode almost 5 handfuls, not quite. So we're still at 4 handfuls and 2 middle fingers, and I'm guessing 2 pinky toes now. Is that about right, T?
Or 5 handfuls minus 1 middle finger.
There you go. That would work too. It's like we've developed our own Roman numeral system for numbering our episodes, except it's the TNA system instead of the Roman numeral system.
Yeah. This is our legacy right here.
And the world will thank us. We'll be dead, but they'll thank us.
We will be remembered.
There will be some posthumous gratitude for us learning or for us creating the TNA numbering system.
Yes. Well, as you know, like no true genius is appreciated in their lifetime.
This is true. This is the hope we cling to. I think, anyway. I mean, it is what it is. How's your week been?
It's been okay. For our viewers, and I think we've mentioned this before, we record about 4 to 6 weeks in advance. So today is actually New Year's Day. And I spent the evening trying to keep 2 dogs calm.
You had some fireworks.
We had some fireworks to deal with. Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. So
I know we did too, but I don't remember hearing any last night, which is weird because usually we can hear them. My brother still lives in kind of on the outskirts of the bigger city that he lives in South Dakota. And he was like, I was ready to go to bed at 11, but I had to stay up and comfort the dog because of all the stupid fireworks going off. So he's like, I was up till 1 or after.
They started at 5 p.m. here. And I was hoping that I wouldn't have to start dosing the dogs and using the Adaptol and putting on their thunder shirts until it closer to 8 or 9. But no. And what that meant was that because I spent 8 solid hours comforting dogs, I couldn't get any other work done.
Right.
So, as you know, and they weren't really that great.
The fireworks?
Yeah. I mean,
yeah.
So, but we did discover, and I can't remember what the drumming was called, but that actually seemed to work, to help. But it also made me want to go to war. So, yeah.
That probably is not super helpful.
No, but I was ready to go to war anyway after all that. Yeah, just listening to all that. What a pain in the ass. Oh, it's Taiko drumming. Taiko. Josh.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
That was helpful, it sounded like.
It was because my voice is a little worn out today because I have to sing to my dogs to help calm them down. And by sing, I mean hours of singing. So.
Oh, we used to just, when we had dogs, we honestly, before we lived in Chicago, we used to take dogs to my parents because they were out in the country and it was a 3-hour drive and that was annoying, but it was so much easier just to take them out there for 2 or 3 days than have to deal with that because it was, they could handle the little fireworks that we would do at my parents with my nephew because they weren't big, bad, boom, crazy, loud. But if we were just out in the country, and we had a neighbor when we lived in Omaha that was I believe he was a Desert Storm vet, and he had such horrible PTSD. He actually went around the first year he lived in the neighborhood and like invited everybody to a little bit of a like a block party and just to get to know everybody and, whatever. And then as the 4th of July came around, he put little notes in everybody's mailbox or on their door or whatever, and was just like, if possible, can we, like, this is very triggering. He kind of explained it. Nobody cared. Like, no. So after that first year, he just left for the entire week around the 4th of July. He would just go somewhere else.
And here's the irony. The only reason, or one of the main reasons why we get to celebrate 4th of July is because of our veterans. So
I know, which is what I thought was just absolutely insane, right? Like,
but people don't care. It's like people with fireworks is the same as people behind the wheel. They can be lovely, but man, if you got something that goes boom, boom, but I always, with 4th of July, it always amazes me. And to steal a great Simpsons quote, celebrate the birth of your country by blowing up a small part of it.
Yeah.
And now, and of course, I live in Husker country.
You did.
So we get gunshots and everything else anytime there's points made. A couple of games ago, I was outside with the dogs. And one of the neighbors decided to shoot a shotgun whenever the Huskers scored.
That can't even be legal. You can't shoot a gun off in city limits, right?
Well, you can. Physically, you can.
I'm not saying you physically can. You're not supposed to.
Legally, no. And for those of you who don't know what a shotgun sounds like going off, it's loud and it's pretty unmistakable. Once you've heard a shotgun go off, you're like, yeah, that's a shotgun.
Sure.
So, yeah, so thanks to my lovely neighbors, one dog, he was pretty calm because he hit the CBD doggy cookies pretty hard. The other one, and then the other one, we just, she maintained her paranoia.
Right.
But the fear kind of wore off. But then I played the war drums, and fortunately, everybody was done by about 12:15. So, but then it took me another half hour to get everybody calmed down enough to actually go to sleep.
So it's a little bit better on New Year's Eve than it is on 4th of July.
Well, yeah, because down here, 4th of July lasts 2 weeks.
Right. I remember.
Yeah.
Hated it. It's still, it does, here in the city, it's like that too, a little bit. Like, it does last, there's a lot of that celebration. Does that, I mean, it's kind of interesting that we start out talking a little bit about fireworks, because it's honestly one of the things we had intended to talk about today, as far as how we survived fireworks as kids, in addition to other kinds of outside safety issues. The theme currently is a little bit like, how did we live through some of the stuff that Gen X was sort of forced to? I mean, for us, some of it was just fun, even though it was dangerous as hell. But
I was going to say, I mean, a lot of it was pretty awesome, wasn't it?
It was pretty awesome. And now today you kind of look at Gen Z and, Gen Alpha. I read an article yesterday that said that starting in this calendar year, right? So you just kind of already told everybody it's New Year's Day. It's 2025. That the generation that starts 2025 is going to be called Generation Beta. And I was like, do we need another one right now? Can we not wait another year or two? And can we call it something else?
Well,
but you've got your alphas, and now you're going to have your betas, but you're going to also have you've got your Gen Zs, your millennials, or whatever. And you kind of think about it and you're like, they probably aren't having as much fun as we did. We had for fireworks. We are very lucky we didn't burn shit down. I mean, people did. Don't get me wrong. People absolutely did burn some stuff down, and unintentionally. Remember those sparklers we used to have?
But yes, that you would
sparks everywhere.
Yes, and you'd hold them in your hands and you'd do designs and spell your
Yeah.
name. I mean, that was always the highlight.
It was. You
From
had
like
your
age
bottle
3
rocket,
on.
your
Yes.
what were those ones that, like, Roman candles? Is that what they were called? There were certain
Roman candle
fireworks.
lights.
Yeah, we were just for a period of time, we were not allowed to light certain things off until we were old enough to do it with like an adult a couple times, and then they would let you do it yourself. But I still remember, like, we go out to my grandmother's farm for the 4th of July, and the uncles. My grandmother had this house that was probably 200 yards off the county road, right? Um,
No.
and she had this little sort of cow trail, we'd call it, that led just kind of paralleled exactly the county road and led right into one of the pastures. And so they would go down to the county to the little cow trail, for lack of a better word, right? And
Mhm.
they'd set up all kinds of crazy, the uncles would do it, set up all kinds of crazy fireworks, and the kids would have to be up by the house 200 yards away because it was dangerous. And we hear all this stuff about how, well, so and so blew their thumb off, or so and so lost an eye, or so and so did
Wow.
whatever. And I
So you
remember
had to stay 200 yards?
they made us stay up by the house until we were old enough to
Oh,
help.
no.
Right. So once
Oh,
we were
no.
like 12, 13, whatever, we could be down there with the dad, the uncles, the men, and help them set stuff up. And we could sit on the truck, the back of the pickup truck, just a few yards away from where the stuff was going off. And my uncle one time set the Roman candle somehow the wrong direction, and it flew up towards the house and started grandma had a
Oh,
bunch of hay bales along
okay.
the side of the house, started one of those hay bales on fire. She was not happy at all. I mean, as you
We
can
all
imagine, it damaged the side of the house because by the time they got the fire out, it was a big deal.
I mean, we were always at that time, determined to be a safe distance,
Right, not anymore.
but not anymore. But I mean, we always had a hose running and a bucket of water ready to go for anything.
That would
Uh,
make sense, but it wasn't supposed to come that direction. So,
no, but I mean, that happens. I mean, I remember one year, and it was like the best 4th of July ever, and I was in high school. And as a matter of fact, we shot off so many fireworks that year that we were sick of them. At age like 15, 16. But we so I guess here's my family's level of safety. Oh, we had a huge gathering at our house. And um, anyway, so my uncle, it was his turn to light whatever he was lighting. So he told me to bring over the flashlight.
yeah.
And then I'm like young and being stupid and having fun. So I turned the flashlight on and then shine it right into my eye.
And then you'd see stars for a while or floaters.
I was them stumbling around saying, I can't see, I can't see. And my uncle going, that's okay, but you need to point the flashlight down here. That was also
And scene.
that, no. That's also the that kind of stuff is about safety for Jen.
I mean, honestly, it does. Yes, it does.
Quit moving the flashlight. It's okay, you can't see, but quit moving the flash. But that was also the same year. My mom won like $200 worth of fireworks.
Yeah.
And she would not let anybody shoot them off.
What'd she do with them?
She shot them off.
Oh, she wanted to shoot them off herself. Okay, that's good.
She said she would. So my mother got several Roman candles. So she would light the Roman candles and aim them at the.
Yeah. We are so fortunate we survived.
Those black cat firecrackers. And so then she would just start flinging them around. And that's when we started calling her Psycho Mom. Because she even had her own theme song.
It probably kind of had to be. I mean, you're raising Gen X kids. Didn't know it at the time, but Psycho Mom is basically how you survive.
Yeah. She was raising me and my siblings. So,
So
but
what you're
no,
telling us is she earned sainthood early.
she did. But also later that night, we ended up at my uncle's farm, and my aunt comes out with all of these bags of fireworks. She's like, "You girls need to fire these up tonight because they're illegal."
I don't remember what was
So
legal
we
and not
did.
legal, to be honest.
And wasn't it the bottle rockets, like they used to be legal? And then I remember, like, at least where I grew up, though, it was like a huge thing because they were so unpredictable
They really
as to where
were.
they would go that they made them illegal. So, because I remember we shot quite a few of those off that night just to get rid of them. And I remember a couple of them, one landed on the roof of the house, and we're like, "Oh, shit."
That was
But
common.
she had us do it because we were underage. So
You couldn't.
if anything burned
Your record
down,
would be expunged.
yeah.
Smart woman.
But juvenile record for arson would
It's
not last
gone.
this long.
It's kind of funny. So, I mean, in addition to like starting her house on fire or starting the hay bale on fire, once they got that put out and she was, I mean, Granna was hot and mad. We all went back inside, and my uncle had one last thing to do, but he was like, "I want you all in the house to watch it," and nobody knew what he meant. And so I made her house, the front of her house faced the road. It was very easy to we could watch. Everybody was in the living room, in the kitchen, just watching. And what he did, he took a black garbage bag, right? Those 20, 30-gallon garbage bags, whatever they are.
Oh, yeah.
And he was a welder. So he filled it with acetylene, tied it off, weighted it down, and then took a kerosene trail up to the top of the road, which would have been a good 100 yards up, lit the kerosene trail, and let it explode the acetylene. I kid you not, one of the kitchen windows cracked, and the glass on the hutch, my grandmother's very, very, very precious china, right? I mean, that stuff never came out of the hutch.
Yeah.
One of the cups fell down and broke. Like the shockwave from the acetylene, like it wasn't even like, it wasn't pretty. It wasn't like we were watching, right, some kind of, it was just a big boom, and it freaked so many kids, some of my really younger cousins, it freaked them out so bad. They were crying. He was not allowed to do fireworks ever again after that, except he had to do them at his own house. Could not do them at grandma's anymore.
I was going to say, were you short an uncle after that? Because burning down hay bales is money. That's lost money.
Yes.
And now he's destroyed her house. Oh, that's terrible.
Yeah. Those were the influences we had growing up, though. Somehow we still survived. So, I mean, fireworks were kind of crazy. I had friends who ended up with permanent scars from fireworks.
Aww.
There was a kid in the town not too far away who had something blew up in his hand, lost a finger. And so these were actual stories that were, sometimes, you get those stories from your parents and other people that are meant to scare you, but they're not somebody you know.
I don't remember injuries, that I remember, especially during the dry summers, and we had a couple really dry summers where entire fields would just, because I remember we were driving from one place to another, 4th of July, and it was actually a classmate of mine, his family's farm. We were driving along, and all of a sudden, it's just like this wall of fire. And the two boys had been out celebrating 4th of July and set off a bottle rocket and took off to hit a field. And I think it burned down a whole bunch of wheat too.
Yeah. That's expensive. And the question
That's
that,
expensive.
the adult version of me is going to ask, because I would never thought of this as a kid, is will the crop insurance pay for it?
Yeah. Well, I just remember it was a big thing because, of course, when we drove by, because I lived on the highway, I don't I think it had just happened because I remember meeting the volunteer fire department.
Mhm.
But I mean, I remember it was a big thing because they were just able to save the house.
Right. Not easy to do sometimes.
No, no. So, and of course, as you get to those old buildings and all the oil and the gasoline and different chemicals and dirty rags and everything else. Once,
Fertilizer.
once
A
something
boogie.
starts burning, leave it in an outbuilding, it doesn't take long for that to spread.
Not at
So,
all. Not at
yeah,
all. So we survived fireworks. What else can you
we
think of
did.
that was just absolutely miraculous that we survived from a safety perspective? Things that are probably not as common today. Outside things.
I remember when one of my younger cousins, uh, growing up and he grew up in Denver, my grandparents came back from visiting them, and she was like, "You would not believe what his playground at the daycare center looks like." Because at that time, instead of hard concretes,
Mhm.
like what we had, they actually were starting to use wood chips, which now nobody uses because wood chips are not. Now they got that foamy, spongy stuff at the playgrounds.
Oh,
But they
wow.
use wood chips at the bay. Yeah, one of the playgrounds near our house has all that. You walk on it, then it feels kind of like dull.
Hmm.
Like there's just enough, I guess, like give or something. And I remember my mom was just like astounded because, at our park or even our swing set, I mean, we just had it up in the yard,
Right. So you fell
you
into the
know,
grass.
and it was metal and it was rusty. But you know what? That's what we had. And we had fun. Mom made sure we kept up on our tetanus shots. But
Yeah.
I think that's the first time I ever remember like the idea of like child safety. And I would have been like 10 on a playground. That was astounding to me because we
I don't
just went
remember.
outside and we played, right?
We did. Yeah. In fact, like, especially even during the summer. So it was the sun is up, you've had your breakfast, out the door you go. Right.
Yeah.
We lived in small enough towns that you could just go play with your friends for the day. Our rule was always you had to stay on our side of the highway. And that was
Let
simply
me,
because she didn't want us crossing the highway ourselves when we were a certain age, right? As long as we stayed on the north side of the highway, we were fine. That was it. Just go play.
because blood flows red on the highway as
As it does.
let me ask you this. Did you guys have a pool in the town that you grew up in, or did you have to
Not
travel?
We had to travel. They have one
Okay.
now, but we did not have one growing up. We had to travel to the town 10 or 12 miles away. So there were three cities in our county, right? Three actual cities that had schools in them.
Mhm.
And the two other cities in our county had pools, which was kind of weird because our city was slightly bigger and we had a big factory in our city that drew a lot of people to it. So I don't know why we didn't have a pool for the longest time, but we didn't have one when I was a kid. We had to get on a bus. If we when we took swimming lessons, we'd have to get up in the morning. We'd have to go all the way, I say across town, but you're talking like less than a mile, right? We had to ride our bikes to the school and we'd go to the bus barn and we weren't supposed to go into the bus barn, but we would go in and get on the bus and wait for the bus driver. And then they would drive, whoever was there for the day would drive us down to this other little town. We'd swim for the day and then the bus would come back and we'd bike home.
We did have a swimming pool in my hometown. And, and I mean, all of the parents would buy like a pool pass for the summer. And so, like, the pool was literally the babysitter for 2/3 of the town all summer long. It didn't matter if you knew how to swim or not, because there were no safety. Like, yeah, we had like the floating rings,
And you had the little things that went on your arms.
No, oh, we didn't.
Oh, we
We
did.
didn't. But I mean, if you can't swim, you use one of the floating rings and then you just,
Get wet.
went with God.
Or
But I mean, that was one thing I was thinking about, like a huge safety thing. Like, I mean, can you imagine? And of course, it was like, there was like one grown ass adult on the whole property all day long, the manager.
right.
Because all the lifeguards were high school students.
They were. Yeah.
And then you had, 11 million kids from age 5 or 6 all the way up. And that was, we lived at the pool. Because my mom, just like so many other parents, was like, at that time, she could get a family pass for the summer for $50. She's like, well, that's cheaper than a babysitter or camp.
It was. I remember taking the check with me the first time I went to the pool for the summer. And it would always be enough for my brother and me. He didn't always go, but the thing that was also crazy was we knew kids in that town, because that was the town my cousins lived in, the town that my grandmother lived in, whatever. And so sometimes we would just take the bus and we would check in at the pool, and then we would leave and go run around that town with our friends and then be back in time to get on the bus to go back to our town. And of course, somebody would always let my mom know, right? Somebody would always call and be like, hey, just so you know, we saw A and J running around with, these other kids, and they're probably supposed to be at the pool, but they're not at the pool, just so you know that they're here and they're safe. Not that we would tell anybody, but we would just run around and do whatever. And the pool was always, it was always high school students. It was actually at the school was where the pool was. So high school students would be our lifeguards. They were our swimming teachers. So yeah, we did that too all summer.
As you talk about, just kind of running around town and stuff, it made me think of, there were a lot of railroad tracks.
There were.
Where I grew up. And I remember several years ago, I took there's some railroad tracks that run just alongside my uncle's farm. So I took my 2 nephews out to walk the tracks because they'd never walked railroad tracks before. And so they were like, well, and I'd asked my uncle, I was like, well, do they, the trains still run, and when do they still run? Because that's an important thing to know, right?
It is.
When the train comes through.
Yes. I know. We had railroad tracks just about, 100 yards from our house, and we did playing them all the time.
Yeah, we did too. And so like, you learn the schedule, you learn where you can jump off real quick, and you learn to touch the track and feel for the vibration, right?
Right.
So yeah, I earned some nephew cred that day. Because they're like, if we go on the track, we're going to die. No, we will. Come on. I'll tell you what to do. And then the best thing to do is then when you're out there and when you're like over a little creek or something, is you yell train and then just watch them freeze. They know not what to do.
It occurs to me as we talk about this that we might not be the best role models for our own nephews and nieces.
We are. There's a reason why neither one of us had children, because that's the kind of, but it was fun because actually I don't know if there was a derailment or something, but there actually were a couple old cars that the kids and I then climbed up on top and stuff. But I think of that and I'm like, I wonder if kids still do that. Like, well, no, no, ma, you don't, because the trains are still in use. But I know, like, for my nephews, and it had never occurred to them. And I always loved walking the tracks growing up.
Yeah. I think one of the reasons we were so intrigued about playing on the trains was actually because of my mom's dad. He told us stories about jumping onto there was a term for it. I don't remember what it was. But he and one of his friends would hop on one of the cargo cars or whatever and
Yeah.
ride the train to the next town, and then they were older teenagers and adults at that point,
But
right?
my dad used to do that too. He would hop on the train, and
Train
then
hopping. Was it train hopping? It had a name. It was
it
just kind of
wasn't
fun to
Train
listen to him.
Spotting, was it?
No,
Train
I
Spotting's
don't.
an excellent movie, though.
I was gonna say I think that's a movie, but I
It
don't
is a movie. It's a
remember.
great movie.
I don't remember what he called it, but I remember seeing it on movies too, right? I remember seeing them
Yeah.
talk about it and thinking, "Oh, my grandpa did that." He did it one time. He hopped a train and took it from central North Dakota all the way to Minneapolis. And then they spent a couple days in
But
Minneapolis. He was very young, and then he hopped a train back. I'm like, "Why didn't you just buy a ticket?" He's like, "We didn't have money to buy a ticket and go have fun." And I was kind of like, "Oh." So we would be out looking for train cars that we knew weren't in use because we would want to pretend like, right, we were grandpa jumping on a train.
But with this, remember how common it was to see hitchhikers when we were growing up?
Yes. Yeah.
And
I don't
actually
think I
pick
don't
up
see them much anymore.
hitchhikers. You don't. Don't. I'm trying to
We
think.
never
Of course,
we never
I
picked up
never hitched.
hitchhikers.
We never did either, and I never have hitchhiked myself, but it was, and again, this would have been someone who was a boomer would talk about, like, he would hitchhike between his college campus and home on the
Yeah.
weekends.
Yeah. One of my high school teachers would talk about it too.
And I
I'd
do
just be like,
remember,
okay.
and okay, boomer, but I think about it and I'm like, I remember seeing hitchhikers all the time growing up.
Yep.
So was it a safer time, or were we just in denial?
I don't know. So I remember always just being told never pick up a hitchhiker, right?
Well, I think that was part of that stranger danger, right?
Probably. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah.
stranger danger wasn't so much a thing, was it, when we were kids?
Yes, it was. It became
Was it?
really big when we were kids. Yeah.
I just don't remember the term. I mean, I remember the term as we were older, but I don't remember it when we were younger.
Well, maybe your parents didn't care if you got kidnapped. Maybe that one.
I remember.
Like in rural North Dakota, nobody's a stranger.
I mean, mostly they would basically just say, if you don't know somebody, right, you don't get in a car with them. I mean, it was stranger danger. I just don't remember them using the term stranger danger. It's entirely possible they did. But I remember, gosh, it would have been early 80s. There was a kid in a town in Minnesota, not super far from us, maybe 2 or 3 hours, who got kidnapped. And to this day, they've never found him, right? He's just been gone. And so he was on all the milk cartons, remember all that stuff. Yes. I still remember his name and what he looked like, because he was on the TV, it was constant. And year after year after year, on the anniversary of his kidnapping, his mom they would interview his mom and dad. They did a whole bunch of work with the legislature to change some laws. They did some of that kind of stuff, but they just never found him. And I remember it was the summer after, and I wasn't outside when this happened. Somebody was in the neighborhood who nobody recognized, and he stopped and started talking to my brother, who was in our yard, and wanted to know if our parents were home. And it was just kind of some weird questions. And my brother was young enough where I don't know that it would have occurred to him to lie. But he simply was like, yeah, mom's in the backyard. Let me go get her. And as soon as he turned around to go get her, the guy took off, right? Just took off and was out of town. And so, I mean, it freaked everybody in the neighborhood out. The police came, the sheriff came. They were asking everybody, like, they were trying to get descriptions of the car. Turned out that this was happening in other towns too. Same guy, same car, whatever. And I don't know whatever happened to that, but that may have been in our world where stranger danger became significantly more real, right? Like, you know, we knew not to get in a car with anybody. We knew all of that stuff, but it was just so weird that this guy came up to my brother in our yard, right?
Well,
asking those questions.
But I told you that BTK had been scoping in my hometown.
Yeah.
He was the reason why I lost one of my classmates. They suddenly moved because BTK was stopping them.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Do you know, are there laws against hitchhiking? Did that change in the last 30 years or something? Because, I mean, in North Dakota, it was always just don't pick them up. It doesn't matter if it's cold. It doesn't matter what's happening. Just don't pick anybody up.
Well, okay, because I have seen like the no hitchhiking signs.
It's been a long time since I've seen an actual hitchhiker out there with their thumb up, carrying a backpack.
Me too.
I don't know what changed, but I know a lot of people. I mean, I knew people in college when we were in undergrad who would drive just as far as I had to drive to go home, and they would pick up hitchhikers. And I would always be like, are you crazy? There's no way. Like, I'm not going to happen, right? Not gonna
but I mean, as a single female,
no,
I would have never.
Yeah,
I would never. So, yeah, always told not to hitchhike and not to pick up hitchhikers for sure.
So, I mean, we know stranger danger was a thing. What about the playgrounds? Tell me about your playgrounds. Because our stuff, when you look back at our playgrounds, because you mentioned the wood chips, I'm kind of curious how death trappy some of your equipment was. Do you remember the merry-go-rounds?
Oh,
you had them, right?
Baby. We actually had, yeah. And I saw so much puke on that.
It's physics again, right? Nobody understood centrifugal force until you got on a merry-go-round.
And I still don't understand it because I just have fun. There were two things at the playground in my hometown. One was, we called it the fun house. And yeah, it basically was like, if you envision a wooden barrel on its side, and then you run around in it like a little hamster. And so many kids got injured in that because there were gaps between the wooden planks. And so, you would stick your fingers in there to help steady yourself. So broken fingers and a lot of slivers.
Yep.
So they finally got rid of that. But that was fun because then you'd run around until somebody started screaming, stop, stop. And then their body would just start flopping around as you're running around. And of course, because of the force, nobody would get flung out. They just keep flopping around inside until you decide to quit torturing them and you stop. But my favorite was, we had what was called the tornado slide.
Was like a corkscrew?
Just had that, like the corkscrew. We called it the tornado slide.
Of course.
Slide because, hello, Kansas.
Right.
But the best part was on a hot, sunny afternoon, and there were no trees.
Those metal slides.
Ow, 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 ow. And then, of course, you slide down.
In your shorts. You're wearing shorts because it's summer.
Yes.
And you burn your legs.
And your butt.
And you do it all over again.
Then you did all over. Then think nothing ever. Yeah. And then, yes, we did have the merry-go-round.
Yeah, we had the merry-go-round.
We had Teeter. Did you have
We
teeter
had this
totters?
slide. We did have teeter totters.
Yeah.
I had some friends who lost some teeth on teeter totters because they, instead of sitting on it, stood behind it, and they were pushing people, right? Like they were helping younger
Oh,
kids go up
yeah.
and down, and they'd get their chin hit with the
Well,
seat.
how many times have you been kicked in the head by pushing somebody on the swings?
A couple.
Yes.
We had a swing at a friend's house who one of the legs was not completely, like it had come out of the anchor.
Well, yeah.
And
So that
so
you
you
hold
would
it down.
somebody would somebody would hold it or try to hold it down. And then and then at some point we just decided, well, let's see how far we can go before we tip it over. And so
Uh,
part of the game would be how much force could you get, right? We didn't know we were doing
yeah.
physics, but we were doing
She's
physics. And at one point we misjudged and toppled the whole swing set over
well,
into its top.
at our house, the goal was to topple the swing over.
Yes,
Because then
that's
you know you
true.
have achieved your goal. Oh my gosh, I'd forgotten about that. About having to stand there and hold something steady for I don't think kids do that anymore. And now that I think about it, I'm like, even driving through our neighborhood, so few houses have any kind of swing sets or
Well,
play equipment.
the ones that do
Then the
have
what?
seat belts in the swing set, we didn't have we had a little tarp strap that we sat on, and that was our
Yeah,
swing sets.
yeah.
It would
And you held
it
on,
would
right?
pinch your ass cheeks if you didn't sit on it just right. But
Right.
like you weren't strapped in. You just hoped you didn't get your
Yeah.
fingers caught in the chain.
Yeah.
Yeah,
But the best part was swinging without using your arms at all.
right. We did that a
Was
lot.
and see how long you could balance. Or we always like to do, and I can't remember what we called it, but like at recess, everybody start, you get all the swings going, and then you try to dodge them.
Yeah,
You run through
this is how you get kicked in the head.
one of the ways you get in
One
the
of the
head.
many ways you get kicked in the head. You also need to have like a helmet now if you're going to do stuff like that. We had monkey bars also at
Yep,
ours,
we
and
did
some were
too.
high and
Yep,
some were not as high, right? For older kids or younger kids.
yeah.
And I remember one kid in it's probably 2 or 3 grades behind me. I must have been third grade probably, and this probably was a first grader, kindergartner. Because we would kind of go out in groups, right? Like recess would be K through 3 or 4 through 6 or whatever. And he got up there and he couldn't get down. Like he
I
was too
know.
scared to climb down. He was scared, like he was just kind of frozen up there. And a couple of us tried to climb up there to help him get down. And it took a teacher to come out with a ladder and literally like pull him down. He was hanging on for dear life.
Dear life.
Uh, but like those were the things. You'd be on that. Somebody would step on your hands while you were trying to go across the monkey bars because they were walking on top where they probably weren't supposed to be. We had this slide stuff, which always had, at least the one at school, and I guess I remember this because it hurt, but you'd have sections of the slide that would be riveted together and the rivets would
Yes.
start coming out. And so you'd
Well,
skin yourself a little bit going down the slide, but you just kept doing it.
and do you, with your slides, because I think back to, and I have seen some of the old slides I've been on, just the angle, the sharp angle. And then also like along the sides, you're only talking about 2 inches or
Yeah.
so along the side of the slide.
I don't know how more of us didn't end up falling over.
Did you ever, this is how my brother broke his arm. Did you ever do the, someone start climbing up the slide and someone start sliding down?
All the
And see where you meet.
it gets knocked off first.
Yeah, that's how my brother broke his arm. He lost
I'm not
that one.
surprised. Yeah, you did. So
I was
you
just
guys
thinking,
so this may not have been a thing where you grew up because it may not have gotten this cold. I don't really know how cold it got in Kansas. But like we would always be told as kids, do not, I don't know why people had to tell us this, do not lick the metal when it's freezing.
oh yeah, we were told that.
Yeah. People did it. There were people, like, I had classmates who, they were boys, licked the monkey bar thing and got, like, his tongue got stuck, exactly like they told us it would happen, and freaked out. And we're all like, just, we'll get the teacher, right? And the teacher would have literally just gotten some water and poured it on his tongue, and he would have been able to, like, back. But he freaked himself out so much, he pulled off himself and left a layer of his tongue
Right
on
or wrong.
off on the monkey
No,
bars and was bleeding, had to
I,
go to the hospital. It was not fun. I mean, not fun
I,
for him. We laughed,
and
of
that'd have
course.
been painful. Well,
I'm
yeah,
sure
because
it was
that's
incredibly painful, probably for weeks, because, like, how do you eat like that?
I think most of I don't remember that, but I think most of the warnings I got were probably on the farm or out in
Sure.
the country. Because,
Yeah.
like, I remember being about 5 or 6, and we were going fishing at one of the pasture ponds. And I remember I had a stick, and I kept jamming it into this hole in the ground. And you're already like, I know where this story's going. And my uncle said, quit doing that because there's a badger that lives in there and he's going to come out and get you. So,
And you wanted to take the badger home.
well, first of all, I didn't know what a badger was, and
Oh.
I wasn't quite sure. So, I mean, I grew up with everything was quit doing this or they're going to come get you.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Like, quit teasing the hogs, going to fall in and they're going to come get you. Because this is how smart I was. No, they just said get you. Because I never
Ours was
knew,
like, they'll eat you.
we used to take the branches and some of the deadfall and stuff from around the windbreak, the my uncle's farm. And so what we did at that time was, and he had some hogs, we would grab the branches and stuff. And at that age, I was the oldest and the tallest. So I was the first one in line. And then my siblings and my two cousins, we'd all line up and we would play tug of war with the hogs.
Oh my.
Just,
Oh my. Yeah.
to make it extra fun because we were so smart. Those hogs would start pulling. And like I remember like leaning over the bed and having to hang on to, like trying to hook my feet into the
Yep.
rungs of the fence. And one time I almost did fall in and my cousin right behind me, like wrapped around me and pulled me back. We thought it was hilarious that and then one day somebody stepped out on the porch and said, leave them hogs alone or else they'll get you. I'm like, what does that mean? And then finally somebody was like, that means that they'll eat you. Like that you can fall in and they'll eat you.
Yeah. Because they will.
And I still didn't believe it because I'm like, well, they're just pigs.
They are, but they can be kind of mean. The farm story reminds me of a time we were out at my grandparents' farm, and we would just run around and play on the bales and do whatever, and however that might have worked.
We used to do that too, running back and forth. Yeah.
My uncle told us, don't go in the north cattle pen because I haven't cleaned it, right? So he would take a front loader and clean out the manure and the mud on a consistent basis because, of course, that's what you got to be. And I remember my cousin B was like, we should go in there. We'll be fine. And I was like, he said not to. I was the oldest. So I was just like, nope, we're not doing that. They did it anyway. So it was age-wise, it would have been me, B, my brother Jay, and then our cousin I. And cousin I decided, I can go on that pile. I can climb that pile. So he gets up on this pile. It's a manure pile. Like, first of all, it's crusted over. So, like, it wasn't an abnormal thing to plan in the first place. But he had told us, like, don't. Everything is soft. And he was like, no, this is fine. He gets up there and he sinks.
Ew.
up to mid chest, which I mean, at the time, he's probably 10, right? 10 or 11, maybe at most. So it's also not like he's very tall, but he sinks down in there deep enough. He can't climb back out, and we can't get him out. We literally cannot pull him out. So somebody had to run and get my uncle, who, I mean, of course, he was just, you could imagine the words that he was uttering as he was coming out to the barn. And his only thing he could do was grab the front loader, put a chain on it, drive it up over the top, and just lower the bucket down to my cousin and be like, grab the chain, I'm going to pull you up. And he just lifted him right out of the manure and then flung him over and dropped him on the ground.
And he was he was hosed off in the yard too, wasn't he?
He was hosed off in the yard. Grandma was ready to go. His mom and dad were not there. They were in town with some other people, probably my parents or whatever, but Grandma was ready to hose him off. Grandpa was laughing so hard I thought he was going to have a heart attack. And Grandma was like, the clothes don't come in the house. You are just going to strip down to nothing and you're going to go take a bath or a shower or whatever you're going to do. And the clothes, when his parents got back, Dad was like, burn them. We're not taking that home with us. Burn them.
I don't know how many times my brother would come home from a day at the farm with my uncle and my grandpa.
Yeah.
And I don't know how many times he would start walking into the kitchen with, hi, Mom. And she'd be like, outside, down to your skivvies. It was off. And then you're going right into the shower.
Yeah.
He never could understand. Like one time he had helped with a fire and just starts walking into the house covered in ash and soot.
Right. Boys. I mean, it's sort of a miracle that if he would have sunk even just an extra foot or two, he would have been in over his head.
His head.
And there's
and
nothing.
He could have suffocated.
Yeah, there's nothing we could do. I mean, literally, we weren't old enough to be able to do. I couldn't have started the tractor myself and got him out of there. We were trying.
He could have won a Darwin Award.
He could have won a Darwin Award. And the weird thing is, we all probably could have multiple times.
That's true.
Just by the grace of Darwin that we didn't. But I mean,
so think about the ones who didn't make it. A moment of silence.
It's sad. I mean, like, I'm guessing that there are quite a few Gen Xers who aren't with us because they weren't lucky. Like, let's just be real. Most of the reason a lot of us survived was sheer dumb luck. It wasn't because we understood physics better. It wasn't because we were carefuler, if that's a word.
But do you think, though, and this is one thing, though, like, and I see this with that, there's more and more conversation about the loneliness and pandemic and stuff. But I was never alone as a kid.
Right.
I was always playing with multiple people. So there was always somebody and vice versa. Like if I started like that time with the hogs, I had my cousin who was my age right behind me to grab me to keep me from falling into the hog pen.
Right.
And finding out exactly what it means when the hogs get you. But then there were other times, like another time with her, she stabbed herself in the foot with a pitchfork.
Yep. My cousin did that too.
So,
he missed the bones entirely. Had to get a tetanus shot and just had to wrap
She did
his foot.
too. I mean, it was it was a miracle. But I mean, it's like I was always around at least one, if not two or three other people getting into trouble and playing, that there was always somebody to kind of counteract your stupid.
Or to go get help when it didn't.
Go get help, right. Because I remember like when she, it was actually kind of cute. I tried to field dress her, not field dress, what's the word? Like treat, like an army medic. in the
Yeah.
field.
Yeah. Field dressing is when you've killed an
It's
animal and you're
hunting.
cutting
That's
it.
it.
Yeah.
I did not try to field dress my cousin. I
No.
tried to do
She's
basic
probably
first
quite
aid.
grateful for that.
And then she could use me as a crutch. But now that I think about it, it's like all the trouble that I got into, there was always somebody else. And so we were always helping each other out. And maybe that was the key to the
Your
survival piece. Yeah. Was that there was always somebody there who, and I think too, I don't know about you, but the fear of a parent getting involved on any level was enough to make everybody work together to achieve the common goal as much as possible.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh my God, don't tell. It's just like I told you this story, and it goes back to farm safety. And I was smart enough to always know you don't mess with cattle.
Yeah.
But my niece and my youngest nephew were not. And they had spent the day out at the farm.
Yeah.
And so they did all the typical farm things. They saw a new calf and they got to ride in the tractor and all, But it was about time for supper. And I said, well, I'll go out and I'll go get the kids. And my uncle had a head of about 30 cattle on the north side of the farm. And the gate was between two barns. And anyway, so the kids were out there and they're like, Auntie, come see this. Come see what the cattle are doing. It's really cool. But they don't understand herd mentality. These two kids did not.
Yeah.
So they learned that if they walked forward, then all the cattle would step back. And then if they walked back, then all the cattle would move forward.
Right.
So then my niece, now, mind you, my only exit is this fairly, the width of a one-lane road between two buildings. My niece then decides to back up a good 50 yards and run towards the cattle, yelling and screaming and flailing her arms over her head, and caused a stampede.
I remember this story.
And
I still remember
the stampede. They were starting to go around the perimeter of the fence. And of course, I'm like, oh, shit. And then split second, which child do I grab to survive?
the one that's closest.
I decided to grab the child who did not spook you.
That's smart. Let the Darwins take over.
And I was like, and I remember, so I grabbed my nephew and I go, run, just take off running. And of course, then, the one who started out, what? Just run. And I'm running. I'm like, shit, we're just going to have to go through, because it was a literal cattle chute. And there's no ladder, no door, no nothing. So we take off just running. Fortunately, they had kind of cooled themselves off by the time they had finished their lap, the cattle. And the only thing I could think of as I was running is, I hope to God nobody is on the porch waiting for us, because it's going to be my ass that gets in trouble.
Yeah. I don't miss it. I'll be honest. I was the oldest cousin on that side of the family, so it was always me who was supposed to keep people from doing stupid things. But there's a limit to what you can do when you're still a kid yourself, to try to keep people from doing stupid things. So it is what it is.
And that's just it. I was the oldest as well. And so I never got the acknowledgement of being the oldest when it came to any kind of privileges. But I was always the oldest when it was time for the hammer to come down.
Right. You should have known better.
Oh, yeah, I should have known better. But
my response, because I was a smart ass, was always, I did know better. I didn't do it. Well, why didn't you stop them? Because I don't have a magic wand, right? Like, I can't stop them. I'm not their parent. What am I supposed to do? Spank them? Like, that's not going to happen.
Okay. No. Actually, to be honest, if I wasn't doing it myself, I was definitely egging somebody on.
Well, yeah, but we weren't going to tell anyone that.
I mean, look at the role modeling I had. And so, like, yeah, there comes a calculation of like, just like my story earlier with my aunt and the, here girls like these fireworks. After a time, it's like, it's easier to talk the 8-year-old into it and admit that you as the 12-year-old did it. But I think the only time but mostly I was so good at lying. My grandparents used to have what's the term? Just a statue of the Blessed Virgin, but kind of that little, what am I trying to think of?
I don't remember what it's called, but I know what you
like
mean.
A little memorial around it. Well,
like a little
I was
shrine.
chasing a little shrine, a little Marian shrine.
Yeah.
I was chasing my little cousin D around. And he's about 3, so I was like,
did you
9.
break Mary?
Worse.
Oh God.
He knocked her over.
Oh no.
And she slid. I knocked her face off. D was only 3. And I was the one who was chasing him around. When I was 9, I did is I made him be quiet. Picked it up and it was heavy. Picked it up and put it back.
Hoping nobody would see it. Yeah, you did.
I knew my ass would be beat so hard.
Yeah.
It goes back to like no supervision.
No.
My grandparents had this, this Marian shrine. Do you think you protected from the grandkids? No. You just tell the grandkids, leave the Blessed Mother alone. And so of course we didn't.
No, why would you?
But again, it was that fear of the punishment and knowing what the punishment was going to be. And so it was like, so I said nothing. And I'm just like, shh. And I was his big cousin. So it's like, she'll be fine. Her face will grow back or something. I don't know. Anyway, that Christmas, when of course my grandparents are like, oh no, who did this to the Blessed Virgin? And I'm just like,
not me. I know nothing. It's kind of funny also because like those are heavy and they can hurt if it hits you on the head when it falls down or it drops on your foot.
And actually now that you say that, we are so lucky because I can't remember who knocked into it, but I remember I was behind and beside it. And I think I'm the one that got it going, but D was in front of me. It could have easily have fallen on him. And he was a little guy. So
even those things I think are different now because when you're at houses where they've got toddlers and they've got kids that move, right? Not just crawl, but move.
Right.
Parents are just far more in tune to the safety aspect of what might hurt the kid. And we were basically just told, don't stick stuff in the light socket. Right? Like they didn't put little.
I did that though.
Well, we did too. I don't know how we did it and lived, but we did it.
I did do it in a light socket. I took the bulb out of a lamp and then stuck a spoon in a lamp to see what would happen.
Oh.
And I told nobody. I had burns on my fingers where eggs had been injured. And I never said anything. I was like 4 or 5. But
that didn't work so good.
I knew even at that young age that like I would get in trouble. So I did. I still remember the jolt. It was very weird, eh? Like I could
Yeah.
feel it travel through my body. And it was like very warm and sparky. And
Where it was.
And I never did it again.
No, because you realized that was bad.
Was
So
that
you
a
learned the
good deal?
lesson you needed to learn. You didn't die. And they would have just been like, "Are you okay? Okay, walk it off," right? Like that would have been the end of
Right.
it. And don't do it again. Like that was
Yeah.
stupid.
Or even with that, like stop crying because you did it and it's your fault. So just stop
Yeah.
crying. So
You asked for
but
it.
no, you're right. The safety piece, and I know that we'll get into this in our next episode of when we're talking about more insight. Yeah, I mean it's kind of funny because now as I think of these stories, I'm like, there were some points where like today we would, as the adult, make more consideration. Just even like with the hog story. And actually, I might have been the catalyst for this because my uncle then started putting up an electric fence outside the perimeter of the actual fence for the hogs.
Mhm.
I don't think it was a fence for the hogs. I'm thinking that was a fence for me
It might have been.
because thing too, I was smart enough not to mess with an electric fence. I mean, there's reasons why by at that point in time I was smart enough not to mess with an electric fence. But now I think about that fence went up soon after we were caught.
Yeah.
And I helped capture hogs once when they escaped. That electric fence really didn't stop them.
No. No, it doesn't.
I'm gonna have to ponder this tonight. Was it to keep the kids out or the hogs in?
I mean, it was probably both. Keeping you out helped keep them in, right? Because kids have a tendency to make hogs go crazy, right? Like they make noise, they chase them, they do whatever. So it probably worked both ways, but I'm sure it was primarily to keep you guys out.
Yeah. I mean, that would have been such a stupid funeral mass.
I mean, let's be real. There were probably lots of those that happened.
It's like, can you imagine? Like, yeah, uh, the homily or just the, how did she die? The hog's got her.
They got her. The hogs got her.
Because
You know what I
everybody,
really would like to know? I think the thing that's going through my head as you say this is we need to find a Gen Xer who grew up in a city.
we
Like
do.
actually, because we have very similar shenaniganry stories, right? Like we grew up, obviously multiple states apart, hundreds and hundreds of miles, but we were both in rural America, in the
Right.
plain in rural America. I'm kind of curious, and maybe the people who are listening, if you're still with us, thank you if you're still with us, but maybe tell us a little bit about if you grew up in a city or in the country or whatever. But I'd be really interested to hear what the experience was like for a Gen Xer who grew up in a place like Chicago or New York or LA or Dallas or whatever, like a big city, not like some podunk little town like we did.
But even like a mid-sized city like Omaha because it would be interesting even just to hear the different experiences. But then also like, what were some of were there any similarities or anything between like playgrounds? Or did the safety stuff kind of start sooner in cities? Who can say? Or I guess somebody can say. I can't say.
No, I think that's going to come down the way here for us. Everybody should be ready for that episode. And hey, if you want to volunteer to be part of it, let us know. We'd love to hear from you.
Yes, please do. We do love our viewers.
All 2 handfuls of you or whatever we might have at this point.
I think 3 and a middle finger, maybe.
Something like that.
Here's the thing, though, everybody. We are not sellouts. We don't do this for the gram. We don't do this for money. We do this because I'm not quite sure.
We lost the bet. I don't know. We decided it might be fun to try, and we're going to try it and see what happens.
And here we are, 24 episodes in, and we still have stuff to talk about. We still have something to complain about.
Which isn't a surprise because we've been doing this, just not on a podcast, but we've been doing this for somewhere near 30 years at this point. So
yeah,
it's not like we can't just keep going. Although we're about an hour and 15 minutes into this, so I'm afraid that when it comes time for you to edit it, you're going to have your work cut out for you. So we should probably wrap it up there, though.
Yeah, we should. So everyone do share whatever memories you have. And like A said, we're really kind of interested in some of you big city Gen Xers. Let us know what were some of the things, or there's a lot of stuff I'm sure we haven't covered. So if there's something that listening to this episode makes you go, what about? Put it in the comments as well.
That'd be great. Fantastic. Yeah. Well, be sure to like and subscribe. Have your friends like and subscribe. And as always, join us again next week for something else to complain about. It's been fun traveling down this particular set of memories with you. The fun thing for us, and I just want to throw this out there, we're actually learning stuff about each other that even after 28 years, we still don't know. We've learned stuff in these episodes, so that's kind of fun for us too.
I had told you about the hogs, though.
You have. You have.
Okay.
But there have been multiple stories in the last 24 episodes that I didn't know about, because they probably would have not been they probably wouldn't have just been something that would have come up. But because we are making an effort to talk about these things, we're also sort of learning new things about each other as other people are learning things about us and our lives as well. So it's kind of fun. But anyway, everybody have a good one, and we will see you next time.
Or we will give you something to complain about, or the hogs will get you.
There you go.